This lesson will show you how to take measurements in your Navisworks project. You can find the measurement tools under the Review tab. By going to the Measure option, you can measure distances point to point, you can measure angles or areas, and you can accumulate a totality of measurements. First, let's show you how to use the point-to-point measuring option. First, we'll go to the top view, and then from the Viewpoint tab, we'll select the orthographic camera view. And now we'll zoom in a little bit on this framing, or steel beam. Now that we've zoomed in, we'll measure the distance of that topmost beam, from the far left side over to the far right. So we'll go to the Review tab and select the point-to-point measure tool. Now we're going to zoom in even closer. You need to move your cursor over the top left corner of the beam until the cursor snaps to. It'll change into a little cross. Left click at that point, and then move your mouse over to the far right side. You'll do the same thing again. You'll position your mouse until you see the cursor change into that X, and then you'll left click again. Once you left click, that'll place your annotation in your project. If you zoom out now, you'll be able to see the measurement of that length of the beam sitting right above it. Alright, so let's try another one. You can take measurements between any two concrete distances in Navisworks. So we can even do it from this beam that runs perpendicular. Just make your connection between the 2 points, left click, and it's there. You can use the point-to-point measuring tool to measure the distance between any two objects anywhere in your project. Additionally, you can take measurements in 3D view as well. Just go to 3D view and zoom in wherever you want to start your measurement. Note too that it doesn't matter whether you're in perspective or orthographic view. The process for measuring in 3D view is exactly the same. Just be aware that because you're working with so many more dimensions, you have to be very, very precise. You may have to fiddle around for a little while until you get that X to appear, to show that you're exactly on the corner when you want to measure from one vertex to another. If you want to delete a particular measurement, just make sure that it's selected, and then from the Review tab and the Measure panel, just click the Clear button. A quick note on that little cross or X that I've been talking about. You don't have to default just to that. You can always change how that looks, what its shape is, by going into the editor. So you can either go into the options editor, or for the keyboard shortcut, hit F12. A window will pop up. So once you're in the options editor, if you click the plus sign next to interface, and then go to the snapping option, you can adjust the properties of that snap to tool. You can choose whether you want to snap to vertices or to edges, or both. You can set the tolerance, so it determines how sensitive to make the snap to option, and the angle of the icon. So we'll close that out, but just remember that that's there and available for you to play around with if you need. Now let's try measuring point to multiple points. This lets you start at a base point and then take multiple measurements to other points. The process of taking measurements point to multiple point is exactly the same as point to point. Just choose your vertex, click on another vertex, and the measurement will be in place. The difference is, you can also now click on other points, and it will take those measurements as well. Now note that this does not annotate or save the measurement on your screen. It just allows you to start from one point, and then take multiple measurements from that point to individual other points. So this can be very useful if you have to take a variety of measurements, and don't want to go back to the measurement tools and do individual point to point to point. You can get everything you need all at once, and you don't have to keep going back to the measurement panel. so just remember that, especially when you're working on larger projects. Alright, now let's try another one of the measurement options. We'll show you how to measure angles next. Select Angle, and this time you'll click on 3 points. The program will then give you the angle between the lines drawn from the first and second points and the second and third points. In the example I've just done, you can see that the angle is 90 degrees. Now let's go find a more interesting one. Okay, I will take the angle under this stairwell here. So we'll just adjust until we're there. So just like before, we'll select 3 points, left click on all of them, and that provides us with an angle measurement of 19 degrees. Alright, let's go find another angle. One thing to note though is that we don't have to click just on vertices. You can click on any 3 points and it will take the angle measurement. So here, we're going to try to measure this obtuse angle as closely as possible. But if we don't exactly hit the vertex, it'll still be pretty accurate. And there you go. It is 136 degrees. Note that I'm just estimating. Navisworks actually gives you very precise angle measurements. Okay, now let's try doing another point-to-point measurement. But this time, we're going to use the lock feature. This lets you set a starting point, and then the line will only move in the chosen axis to which you're locked. So that means you can take a starting point and then measure along the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis, perpendicular to that point, or parallel to it. We'll show you parallel for this example. So just like before, we're going to go to Measure and select Point to Point. And then we are just going to click once to set our initial position. We'll move the mouse up, let's just say to the other side of the beam and left click. And then that will give us our parallel distance. So now let's try this again, but instead we'll switch to perpendicular to show you how that works. So we will find a place to measure. Let's go from this flange of this column. Now when we move the mouse, it will only move in directions perpendicular to the face that we have chosen as our starting point. So we're going to measure to the other side of the column, to the other flange. So the mouse will snap to the face, and if you left click, then that will give you the measurement from the one point to the other. If you want to get more information on the measurements, you can always go up to the Measure panel in the Review tab, and left click on the little arrow in the lower right hand corner. So once you hit the button, you can see that it includes the start and end point of the measurement line that you drew, including all 3 axes, as well as the simple measurement itself, which you can also see on the main screen. So this can be an extremely useful tool, especially if you have to make sure that certain elements of your project are lined up in certain planes. The information on the X, Y, and Z axes can be extremely useful in this circumstance. You can also convert your measurement to a red line by clicking on the Convert to Red Line button, which will turn your line red, but also create a saved viewpoint that you can go back to and reference. That's actually a very, very useful tool, because it lets you save a particular measurement and access it again at any time you need. Let's go ahead and zoom in on another part, and we will draw a point-to-point line, and then we'll convert that to a red line as well. You can see it appears under the viewpoints as View 4. Remember too, that if you have created a distance, but haven't converted it to a red line, you can always press the Clear button in the same panel to clear the distance out.